I'm going to give a quote from one of my mentors who told me, "No one is ever going to care more about your career than you do." So what I would say is figure out what is the job or the career that you want. Figure out what the gaps or opportunities that you have to get there. Like go read the job description and say, "Hey, I'm really good at this. I'm okay at this. I'm not so great at this." And for any of the things that you're not so great, create a development plan for yourself and go and start doing those things.
It takes something a little more to lead with impact. I'm Lisa Nichols, author of Something Extra, and this podcast was inspired by our daughter Allie, whose additional chromosome has shaped how I see people and leadership. Each episode features conversations with inspiring leaders from around the world about what truly defines how they lead and serve others. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please consider leaving a 5-star review. It helps more people discover the show. And if you'd like to go deeper, my book, Something Extra, is available on Amazon and through other major book retailers. Today, our guest is Andrew Wilder, a veteran cybersecurity leader with over 2 decades of experience navigating the digital landscapes of global giants like Nestle and Hillenbrand. Currently serving as the Chief Security Officer at Vetcor, Andrew is recognized for his strategic vision and risk management and his dedication to mentoring the next generation of IT professionals. Well, Andrew Wilder, welcome to the Something Extra podcast. I'm so delighted that we can make this work today.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, we've been in the same rooms for a long time together.
That's true, we have.
Lots of the HMGCIO summits over the years and some other rooms. And so it's just really fun to welcome you to the podcast. But Andrew, I was looking, you have had a pretty stellar career in cybersecurity for what, over 25 years?
Over 25 years, that's right.
It's some really iconic companies like Bank of America and Hewlett Packard. You spent 18 years at Nestle.
That's right. Yep, that's where I consider that I sort of grew up in my career, was at Nestle.
That you grew up there, yeah. But you know what? You've built multiple security systems from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
You've done this multiple times. What is it about building from zero, to building a system like that really energizes you?
Well, to come into a company that needs cybersecurity and realizes that they need it is a very different cultural starting point than to be in a company and then trying to convince everyone that they need it.
Yeah,
right?
right.
In Nestle, we were seen, I would say the first half of my career, we were really seen as a cost, a necessary cost, but just a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until about 2012 when attacks and hackers and all that stuff became fairly widespread in the news that CEOs and C-suites and boards started getting interested in cybersecurity. And then it was less about me telling people the things that they needed to do. It became a pull approach where people were coming to me and saying, "Hey, how can I be more cyber secure? What can I do to fix this?" So in the last 3 companies that I've been at, including Vetcor, where I'm at today, I've come in as the first CISO, and it's been in a situation where the company realized that they need cybersecurity, they need cybersecurity leadership. And so you have that backing, you have that support to be able to build from the ground up. And it's exciting to build new teams and create energy and go through the norming, forming, and storming, all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, it energizes me, and I'm really happy to be able to do that. And it's nice that I've kind of developed that skill set now. It's a fun thing.
You're kind of a go-to guy, and as you were talking, Andrew, I was thinking there are companies that think, oh, it's it's just a cost.
Yeah.
But it is so important, isn't it? It really is. If you don't have a cybersecurity program, call Andrew, call somebody because you definitely need someone, you need that. It's protecting your data and your IP. It's really paramount. But Andrew, let me ask you this, because I'm sure you've had, like I said, you've had this illustrious career for over 25 years. What did success look like to early Andrew in those younger days?
That's a great question. I never thought that I would be a chief information security officer. I didn't really imagine that for myself. I knew that I wanted to be a leader, and I was a leader from the beginning. And I knew that I wanted to be a good leader for my team. And it was also probably about halfway through my career that I really transitioned from being what I would call a manager to a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So as a manager, I would tell people what to do. I would say, "Hey, this is the smart thing to do. This is what we're going to do." And I love the quote from Steve Jobs where he says, "We don't hire great people to tell them what to do. We hire great people to tell us what to do." And it was during that kind of midpoint of my career that I realized, hey, I need to listen. I'm hiring great people for a reason. I need to listen to them. And I also got into the mindset of kind of agile, 80% and iterate, allowing people to fail fast and learn fast, make mistakes. That's really how we learn. Now, obviously, in cybersecurity, you don't want to be making big mistakes, but in areas where they could, I love to let people try crazy ideas, and even it might sound crazy to me, sometimes for them it would work out into something really amazing. So I think that's kind of the transition for me, was that midpoint in my career when I transitioned from a manager to a leader.
Yeah, I love that. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. So we talked about this, but you spent 18 years at Nestle, another iconic company. We had the blessing of doing business with Nestle for many, many years. But what made you say, Andrew, okay, it's time to walk away from Nestle after 18 years?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting part of the story. So I had just had my son, and I had taken. He was born in 2012 or 2021. In fact, he's 5 years old today. Happy birthday, Enzo.
Happy birthday, Enzo.
and uh, and I had taken some paternity leave, so I got about 2 months off, and I came back, and I was the regional CISO of Americas, Asia, and Europe. So I was working 14, 16-hour days. Mondays and Fridays were okay, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it was just a nightmare. And it was a great role. I mean, I loved what I was doing. I loved my team. I loved my peers. I loved the company. And I had a real heart to heart with my boss, who was the global CISO, John. He's still there, and he said, "Look, Andrew," he said, "your next move in your career is my role, and I'm not going anywhere. So let me help you to find the next place for you. I will be heartbroken to lose you, but I want to do the right thing for you as a person." And so he did. He helped me to find a global CISO role at Hillenbrand, which is a manufacturing company. And it was my first time, doing it on my own, as we said, building it from scratch. But it was an amazing thing to have a leader who was that selfless, to be able
Hmm.
to see what was next for me and what I needed and help me to make that transition. So it was really, really a special part of my story.
Yeah, that is a great story. I love that. And thank you, John.
Yes, thank you,
Thank
John.
you, John, for seeing you, right? And that's wonderful. Well, okay, so I know this was one of your favorite subjects, and that's Enzo.
Yes,
And you said that you call it you're a different kind of dad. It's kind of like the second act dad,
yes,
because you've got two adult children, and
yep,
Enzo's 5.
yeah.
Um, so what changed for you? I mean, just was it the hours and just knowing that you did not want to work those hours again, being more
That
present?
I think that was a big part of it. My goal is to be as present with him as possible. You know that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yes, Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, one of my favorite books. So in chapter 2 of that book, he reads this poem that was super popular in the 1930s and translated into hundreds of languages and read all over the world. And it's called A Father's Lament. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. And
Mhm.
basically, the story is, there's this father. He's very busy. He gives his son a hard time. You're putting your elbows on the table. You're not brushing your teeth. Your knees are dirty on your pants. And then the son, before the son goes to bed, he comes and gives him a big hug, and he's busy reading his newspaper, and it kind of hits him. And then he goes up to the room of his young son, and he sits by his bed, and he says, "I've been measuring you with the yardstick of a man, and I have to remember you're just a little boy, you're just a little boy, you're just a little boy." And rereading that and at the time having a 3-year-old son, it just hit me right in the chest, Lisa. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized every time he asks me to do something, my answer is going to be yes.
Yeah.
Unless it's a safety thing, of course.
Right.
But, every time he says, Daddy, can we play this or can we do this? It's yes. I want to enjoy every moment with him and treasure that and give him that kind of nurturing and love that he needs and not be diving into my phone or answering emails or whatever it is. And so that's a
Mm-hmm.
priority for me is spending time with my son and with my family.
Right. Well, and it goes so fast, Andrew.
Yes,
You've
it
got
does.
2 adult children. I mean, it's like you blink your eye and they're a
Yeah,
teenager,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I love that, and I mean, we've all I mean, I've been there too. I just think about when we were building our company. I mean,
yeah.
there's sacrifices. Our family made sacrifices, right? Our
Right.
children made sacrifices, and you do get to that point where you're just like, I'm just not willing to do that anymore. You sacrifice my family for whatever it is. There's nothing too grandiose, to
Yep.
substitute your family. So, how do you think fatherhood has reshaped how you lead?
I think it definitely has. I think one of the things that I've struggled with in my career, this is really going to be honest here, is empathy. And I
Mhm.
think I think fatherhood gives me more empathy. I don't see my team as my children. I mean, I really see them as my peers. But being a father and having empathy for your children and seeing them as kind of you 2.0 and watching them grow, I think that does give us more empathy towards others, and I hope
Mhm.
that that translates well to my team. Um, I've done this many times. I've got lots of experience. I know how to do things fairly well in the cybersecurity side. So I might come across sometimes as kind of a steamroller, but I really try to sit back to let other people give their ideas. I really believe in the kind of diversity of thought,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's hard for me sometimes to hold my tongue or not jump all over ideas. But I think that empathy helps us to be better leaders and kind of sit back sometimes.
Right. That's funny that you mentioned holding your tongue because I talk about in my book, Something Extra, the very first
Mhm.
chapter is humility.
Yes.
And one of the things that oftentimes a leader has to struggle with, Andrew, is you do think you have the answer or you have the way that forward,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes you just have to bite your tongue and let your team talk first. And I heard somebody say recently she has a lot of scars on her tongue.
I've never heard
And
that.
I thought that was really funny. I'm like, "Okay, I want a lot of scars on my tongue too," because,
Uh,
yeah, that's funny. Well, you already mentioned this, but I know that one of your practices and one of your disciplines is no phone or 0 phone days.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us about that, Andrew. Boy, how hard is that?
It's pretty hard. You got it. So one of my friends inspired me to do this because he did it on his birthday. And one thing you got to do, and he didn't do this, is he didn't tell anybody he was going to do it. And so people are, it's his birthday, and people are calling him over and over and over and can't reach him, and they're worried about what's going on. So
Yeah.
I told my older kids ahead of time, like, I'm going to do this. And then I told my wife and Enzo in the morning and said, okay, I'm not going to do my phone at all today. I learned this phrase recently called fubbing. You know what fubbing is?
Have no idea.
Fubbing is phone snubbing. So it's the
Oh,
verb for
fubbing.
when a parent is looking at their phone and their kid is talking to them, "Hey, mommy, daddy, I want to do this thing," and the parent's just locked into the phone. That's called fubbing. And actually, having
Mhm.
a word for it makes it more real to me. So, you know, you can do it. Anybody can do it, and especially, I know I don't care how demanding your job is, especially on Saturdays or Sundays, you can do it. There's
Yes.
also ways that people could reach you in an emergency. So, like, someone could call your spouse or your partner or your friend or whatever and say, "Hey, we have an emergency at work. We really need you to jump
Yeah.
in." Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I'll break my 0 phone day. But it's very refreshing, and you realize that, hey, we used to live our lives before we were super connected all the time, and it was
Yes,
fine.
and it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I remember, Andrew, just funny story. I co-opted. I was an intern at McDonnell Douglas,
Okay.
originally from from Kentucky,
Uh-huh.
co-op. And one time I was driving home after work to Kentucky and I got completely lost. And so I'm like just looking for a place to pull over to get the put the quarter in the phone.
Yes,
I
yeah.
mean, people don't even remember having to do that, but I didn't have the
Uh-huh.
GPS. I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
And we survived.
Yeah. I
We
had the
did.
Thomas guide, right? I would whip that thing out and go
Yes.
to page,
Yes.
33 and look at quadrant H5 and, find where I was supposed to go.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's just completely foreign, though, I think, to our kids today. Well, I love that you talked about going from manager to leader.
Hmm.
Where do you think leaders get this wrong sometimes? Like managing people versus leading people.
Yeah. So two things I've seen where leaders get this wrong. One is to surround yourself with yes people. And a great example of how to not do that was Abraham Lincoln. So I'm sure you know this, but Abraham Lincoln, once he was elected president, his whole cabinet were all people that had run against him. So he wanted people who had an opposite point of view
Yeah.
to help, bounce all of his ideas off. In fact, in our IT executive group, we have a rule called obligation to dissent. So when someone gives an idea, at least one person has to say, "Hey, here's a reason I think that might not be a good idea," to help everybody kind of think about it. So that's one. And the other thing I think is really leaning on using authority to do things, right? That should not be the
Mhm.
reason that people are doing things because of fear or your authority. It should really be like you're leading with a vision. You're inspiring people to say, "Hey, here's how we want to go," and then get them on board with your vision and your goal, and not pushing people or threatening or any kind of fear or anything negative. And certainly you see those in business all the time. You see people who lead in those ways, and that's not the right way to do it. I've worked for leaders who are wonderful and leaders who are absolutely awful, and it's a great lesson of how not to do it when you see the second one.
For sure. Well, and John Maxwell calls it positional leadership.
Hmm.
Positional leadership, when you look at the 5 levels of leadership, Andrew, that's the lowest level. Is
Yep.
positional, just because you've got the title,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, one of the, I think the major things that a leader can do is to remove roadblocks.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah, I
one of
mean,
my that's one of my two leadership goals. There is removing roadblocks.
and that allows people to get their best work done, right?
Yep.
Let me ask you this. I know that you have led 11, I think 11 or 12 different reorgs.
Mm.
I know it's one of your least favorite things to do, Andrew, too.
It was a skill that I never wanted to get good at that I got really good at. So
Yeah, that there's so much emotional weight there. I mean,
yeah.
how did you personally carry that emotional weight? There was some really tough decisions in those
Yeah.
reorgs.
So I grew as a leader in my maturity of being able to do that as it went on. The first time I did it, I really believed that we were transforming and that we were doing things better and that we were going to, make a difference. And in some cases, we kind of did, right? Like the first one that I did was really like merging 4 orgs together and then eliminating 3/4 of the middle management that we didn't need anymore, right? You don't need four, database managers. You could just have
Right,
one.
right.
And it's not necessarily eliminating jobs, but just changing the organizational structure to match that. But as it went on, having to let go people that you've worked with for 10 or 15 or 20 years, that you know them, you know their family. I mean, it's really hard to do.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't have like a secret for how I did that. I would say the last probably 4 or 5 years of my career where I was having to do that were the worst because it just kept coming more and more often. There was more squeezing of finances, and
Mhm.
one way that I like to do it is called early retirement programs.
Mhm.
So, you realize that you have a bunch of people in your workforce who are close to retirement and you bridge them to retirement. You give them You take care of their health care until Medicare kicks in. And this is a positive way to do this. So, if you're
Yeah.
thinking about doing it in your organization, if you have any way to do an early retirement program, it's a great way to let people
Mhm.
retire early, and they're happy to do that. And then you can bring in, kind of more entry level talent to help boost the org. But
Mhm.
that's the only positive way that I that I remember doing.
Right. That's a good word of wisdom. That's a good word of wisdom. Um, all right, let's talk about this. So, high performance,
Mhm.
if every professional thought of themselves as a corporate athlete, what
Okay.
would they do differently tomorrow, Andrew?
Oh, I like that.
Corporate athlete.
Yeah. A corporate athlete. My gosh. I guess you would have to train for everything that you're going to do. You'd have to provide the right fuel for everything that you're going to do. I think it would really change your mindset. I think a lot of people go to work every day and just thinking like, what is it that I have to do today? And they're not focused on a long term goal like an athlete is.
Mhm.
So maybe seeing daily tasks as training opportunities, looking at ways that they can make things better for themselves. Athletes are always trying to be incrementally better, kind of following a
Optimize.
continuous improvement mindset.
Right. Right.
So maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Boy, that's one question I wish you had asked me ahead of time. That's a fun one.
That's a loaded one, right? Well,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about daily disciplines,
Yeah.
right? For really high performers and
Yeah.
elite performers, it's like what you said, the training, the like, how can we make this better? That mindset is so important, I think, right?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
want a high performing organization, you got to have high performing individuals because individuals make up the organization.
That's true.
Um, yeah. Um, let's gosh, I've got so many more questions here, but I tell you what, I think we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Andrew Wilder on the Something Extra podcast.
Hey there. In a challenging business climate like this, savvy leaders look to technology to find an edge. This can mean the difference between staying ahead of the curve or playing catch-up. It's time to collaborate with the highly skilled experts at Technology Partners. Our team of technologists draws upon decades of experience for your project, with each bringing a passion for solving problems and a track record of success. How can we help you overcome your biggest technology challenges? Visit technologypartners.net to book a free consultation with one of our leaders.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Something Extra podcast with my friend Andrew Wilder. So, Andrew, I want to talk about this subject that is on the tongue of every IT leader I know, and that's AI. You call it the beauty and the beast. Tell me your ideas around AI.
So when we think about AI from a cybersecurity perspective, we think about three things. So the first part is how do we enable the business to use AI? Now, if you had asked me about this 3 years ago, I would have said that we would put a bunch of controls around it. We would be very cautious about it. I think that time has ended. At this point, myself and all of the top level CISOs that I know are embracing AI, are jumping feet first into it. All businesses that are wanting to succeed are going, AI
Mhm.
initiatives. There's
Right.
top down things saying, hey, we need 20% incremental improvement across the board in every department on leveraging AI. You go and figure out how to do that. So I think from an enabling the business perspective now, what you really want to do is you want to understand how they're using AI. You want to have visibility into it so you can start to control it. I think that's the enabling the business part. The second part that you want to think about with AI is how the attackers are using it. So I'm sure you've seen the news around Mythos recently from
Yes.
Anthropic.
Yes.
Mythos is really, really good at finding zero-day vulnerabilities. And zero-day vulnerabilities have previously been fairly rare, but if there's a tool that can find tons of them very quickly, then the attackers will have a huge advantage. And that means if they want to attack somebody, they can, no matter how well you think you're going to be doing cybersecurity. So, and then the third part is how do you combat the attackers? So we like to say fight fire with fire, right? So we are
Mhm.
leveraging AI as much as possible, using agents to do what I would consider kind of lower value activities to allow the team to focus on higher value activities that hopefully will help to prevent or disrupt the attacks that people would bring against us from a cyber perspective. So
Hmm.
that's the beauty and the beast, and that's the three ways that we think about AI today.
That's
Probably going to
good.
change in a week, but that's where we're at right now.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I just wanted to mention this because I read this about you that you love the Diary of a CEO podcast
I
is
do.
one of your favorite resources for really learning about AI and leadership. Um, and so I just wanted to mention that for our listeners in case they want to check that out.
Yeah, my second favorite podcast after the Something Extra podcast is Diary of the CEO. And
Yeah.
he has had some incredible guests on there. And the thing that I really like about it is it doesn't like nerd out too hard, right?
Hmm.
It's very like my mother would listen to it, right? It's very
Right.
palatable and it's very interesting. One quote that I really liked from a guy named the Godfather of AI, and I don't know if he gave himself that name or not, but um, he was asked in the podcast, if you were telling your 18-year-old, what sort of job to get into today that's not going to be disrupted by AI, what
Hmm.
advice would you give? And he said very plainly, he said plumber, plumber.
Yeah.
So I mean, and some at some point those will get disrupted by robots and things like that. But I think plumber or HVAC, those are things that probably today are not going to be easily disrupted
Electrician.
by AI.
Yeah,
But
I
if
agree.
you're
The
a
trades.
developer, my
Mhm.
my heart's out to you right now.
We talk about it all the time. We talk
Mhm.
about it all the time, especially the entry level. I feel like it's going to go away.
Yeah.
What, gosh, I mean, Andrew, this is like not saying that you got a crystal ball, but with AI, I mean, 5 years from now, how is it going to look different the way that we work? I mean, what do you think?
So it will continue to completely transform the way that we work. Um, once Mythos is introduced to the general public, the difference in how AI is being built today versus how it was being built over the last 2 or 3 years is that now AI is building itself. And so if you're Anthropic or OpenAI and you hire 1,000 developers, that's one thing. That's cost. That's people. They can only work 8 hours a day ish, right? And they're doing the best that they can. If you're
Mhm.
using AI to build AI, it scales exponentially.
Mm.
So the speed with which we'll start to release newer and better versions will continue to shorten, and what will happen is those major companies will start selling like a human AI agent to do things. Here, I'll give you an accounting agent, or I'll give you a sales agent, or whatever it is, and those will replace human jobs. Now, that doesn't mean that human beings will be out of work. It means that what human beings will do will transform. Now, I
Mhm.
can't tell you exactly how that's going to work or what that's going to be. I don't have. You asked me about my crystal ball, but in terms of AI, those are things that I know is going to happen,
Right.
or I'm very sure about, I would say.
Yeah, and we need to have our eyes open, to that, right? And
Yep.
and as leaders even be thinking about it. And if you're a leader and you're thinking, "Oh, it's something that I can push off," you've got to start thinking about it
You,
because
you cannot push it off anymore,
you
Lisa.
cannot push it off, right? Because your competitors are out there figuring out how to leverage it
Yep.
and,
Or a brand new startup has just been started with only 5 people, and they're leveraging it fully, and they're going to come after you as fast as they can.
yeah, agreed. Agreed. Well, St. Louis, we're very lucky, I think, in the St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yay, St. Louis. I mean, we have a very strong CISO community here.
St.
Uh,
Louis is the number one CISO community in the world. Now we say that, but no one has ever challenged me on that. So
right.
I'm going to keep saying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. I love it. You guys, you have a very tight knit community. Um, You know, let me ask you this. I mean, because you've been in boardrooms. I mean, what does a boardroom conversation look like when it comes to cyber and risk? What does that sound like, Andrew?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think the real answer is that it depends. Some boards have people who understand cybersecurity at some level. Some don't. Some of them are looking at it and focusing on it, some are not. I think if you are a chief information security officer, one of your main goals is to make sure that your board understands the
Yes.
cyber risk and that
Yes.
you're able to translate that into business risk. This is another thing I would say that happened to me about mid-career, is where I realized what my role really is a subject matter expert on cybersecurity risks. And when I would go present to the board or the executive suite, what I would say is, hey, here's a risk A. There's three different ways that we can control that risk. There's a very expensive way that can really reduce it. There's a kind of middle of the road way that's less expensive that'll reduce it a little bit, and there's a kind of an ignoring it way. And what is the risk appetite of the business in terms of how you want to pursue these things?
Mm.
And prior to that, I would just get focused on a specific solution, and then I would say, we got to do this solution. And then I realized that's not my job. My job is to say, here's a risk, here's the ways that we can control it. You tell me which of those you want to do, and then I will go and implement that thing. So, unfortunately, and you see this a lot of times with cyber attacks and companies like Drizzly and some others that were in the news where, they had a cyber attack and then it was clear that they may have put something in their 8K or their 10K or whatever, but they really weren't paying any attention to cybersecurity risk. And the unfortunate thing is you're either going to pay attention to it, before you
Now
get breached or after you get breached. So I would recommend to do it before because it's probably,
it'd
better
be a
for
lot less expensive probably
you. Yep.
before, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because those penalties and that can be really, really hefty. Um, how I mean, you talk about being a ruthless prioritizer. I
Yes.
just have another friend and we were talking about time management, and he like does his time in 30-minute blocks. How do
Mhm.
you decide, Andrew? We can't do everything. How do you
Yeah.
decide what not to do?
Uh, there's a there's a quote that's attributed to Warren Buffett, but I'm not 100% sure it's him. But I'm going to go
Yeah,
for it anyway.
just go for it.
So he says, write down a list of the 10 most important things that you need to do, and then rip off the bottom half of that list, right? So
Yeah.
what I've always done is I have my team focus on the top, let's say three. We usually do three. What are the top three things that we're going to do that we're going to transform? And in Vetcor, we call them our glass rocks. Like, what are the things that we cannot drop? Now, we
Yes.
still need to do the other things, but those other things we can slow them down or we can pause them, because what we really need to do are those glass rocks. And you talked before about removing roadblocks. I think one of the things that we need to do for our teams is to surround them with this kind of safety where they can focus on doing those three things really well and not
Yeah.
get wrapped up into the thousands of other things that will be thrown at them. Say, hey, CEO read this article in the news today about Mythos and AI security. What are we going to do with this? Okay, well, we're going to do something about it for sure, but we need to work on our glass rocks right now, and we need to figure that stuff out first.
Yeah. I love that metaphor so much. If for our listeners that don't know that, there's glass rocks and there's plastic rocks,
That's right.
or rocks, the rocks that will break, and the glass rocks are the ones that you just cannot break. I mean,
Yeah,
you can't compromise on those. I love that. Um, I know that you got a favorite book, and I want to talk about, because you've scaled many programs, and like I said, you've had just this illustrious career, and you've had a lot of different roles. But there's a book, Andrew, that I read that you really love, and it's called The First 90 Days
I do love
by
that book.
Michael D. Watkins.
Yep,
What do you love about that book? And I think about, like, even a new president, it's the first 100 days when you're
yep,
in. Maybe there's a listener out there that is getting ready to take on a new role.
yep.
Andrew, what would you say to them? I mean, what do they do in the first 90 days?
So I have to give credit where credit's due. My mentor knew that I was starting a new role, and
Yeah.
he gave me that book.
Is
And
this John, or is this a different mentor? Was this John or a different
no,
mentor?
no, a different
A
mentor, a
different
St.
mentor.
Louis-based mentor.
Yes.
Um, so the first 90 days is really about how do you hit the ground running in any new role, and how do you maximize the amount of value you can deliver from day one. Now, obviously, day one is not really possible, but the first 30 days should really be spent on understanding the organization so that you can make a plan of what you're going to do. And then within that second 30 days, you're already starting to begin some sort of quick wins. And within that first 90 days, you've already accomplished some of those quick wins. And then you can start to look at what is your longer term horizon for adding value. But the ability to add value within the first 90 days is huge because most people joining a new organization, it takes them about 90 days to ramp up to where they're giving value. And your idea
Right.
is to how do you hockey stick that? How do you, get ahead of that curve so that you can start delivering value to the org as fast as you can.
I love what you said, though. The first 30 days is just understanding the organization.
Yeah. You're never
Talk.
going to have the time like you do your calendar is never going to be that open as it is in the first 30 days. So
Right.
go out there and interview people, meet people, get an understanding.
Yes, yes. I've talked to so many leaders and at first they're doing listening tours. That's all they're doing,
Yep.
right? Is just
Yep.
getting out there and listening. I want to talk a little bit about this because I know that you work with Cyber Up.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Cyber Up, and then, I've got a couple more questions for you, and then we'll talk about something extra.
Yep. So I know that you're big in the St. Louis community, and CyberUp is such a light in the St. Louis community. And for those of your listeners that don't know about it, so CyberUp is a nonprofit, and what they do is they provide free training to people who are career transitioners who are getting into cybersecurity. And we've had all kinds of amazing stories of people who come through there. A lot of military, ex-military, people who are in sales or warehouse workers or whatever it is have gone through there. And what happens is they get the free training. At the end, they get a cybersecurity certification. And then we place them as apprentices in great businesses throughout St. Louis. And many of those people have gone on to have really great careers in cybersecurity. If you come to the graduations, you'll see some of the alumni who come back and give a speech about how it transformed them.
Mhm.
And one of the most emotional parts of it for me is going to the graduations and seeing the families of these people and seeing what that's like for them. That's not
Yeah.
just, one change. That's a new mortgage payment. That's a better life for their children. I mean, everything transforms for these folks as they go through that program. So it's really wonderful to be part of that. I'm super lucky to be the president of the board there. I never thought that would happen either, but I met Tony about 8 or 9 years ago and was really struck by the
Mhm.
organization and what they were doing, and I just wanted to get involved. And I'd kind of pester him every time I'd see him, and finally he let me join the board, and then I kept doing good stuff for him, I guess. So
Yeah.
and it's great. The other thing that they do, by the way, is they also have this thing called Power Up, and Power Up is where they go to K through 12 students and they go and teach them about how to be safe online for the younger kids, and then for the
Mhm.
older kids, what it's like to have a career in cybersecurity. And they meet with people who are in there and they talk about, hackers and how to prevent that. And it's an exciting thing for kids to see too. And some of those folks who have been inspired have gone on to join the program later on and they get a certification and get placed as an apprentice. What a wonderful story.
That's awesome. I see, that's a part of what they did that I did not know, that they're starting younger, and
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that's wonderful. It's
They're one of
getting
the
it.
only organizations who does that cybersecurity career training that also
Mhm.
funds that Power Up style program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good. Well, Andrew, what piece of advice would you give someone if they are thinking about getting into cybersecurity or a leadership role?
Yeah.
I mean, they could go to Cyber Up, but what
Yes.
else would you say to them?
So I'm going to give a quote from one of my mentors who told me, "No one is ever going to care more about your career than you do."
Mm,
So what I would say is figure out what is the job or the career that you want. Figure out what the gaps or opportunities that you have to get there. Like go read the job description and say, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm okay at this. I'm not so great at this. And for any of the things that you're not so great, create a development plan for yourself and go and start doing those things. One equation that I like for this is 1 to the 365th power is 1, but 1.01 to the 365th power is like 37. So what that means is if you just go 1%
1%.
towards your goal every day, you will get 37 times closer to your goal by the end of a year than had you done nothing towards it. So really know what your goals are and do things, incremental things to get yourself towards that goal, and then go
What
out and
a
get it.
great way to look at it. I love that. I'd never heard that before, Andrew, and I love it. And so it's whatever. I mean, that can apply to your career, that can apply to running a marathon, whatever
Yep.
it is that
Yep.
your goal is, right? So, and most people will be like, I can do 1% more
Exactly. Exactly.
today,
Yep.
you know? So very good. Well, I've got just a couple little quick lightning round morning routine. Do you have a morning routine?
Morning routine. I do. It's mostly focus on spending time with my son, but I do about 15 minutes of core exercise. I make
Mhm.
breakfast for the family. Always a smoothie that has fruits and vegetables in it. That's one of our secret ways to get Enzo to eat vegetables. And then he gets up. We have breakfast together, and I take him to school. That's my morning routine, and that gets me psyched for the day. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's so good. You
Try
got
not
that.
to read your emails, get some sunlight maybe.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I love that, taking him to school. That we
Yeah.
call that windshield time. And
Windshield time. I've not heard that. I like that.
yeah, windshield time, and it's, just a beautiful way to
Dad, tell me
set the
about tell me about the circulatory system. Okay, I wasn't ready for that question.
day. He sounds like a really, smart little boy. We've already talked about, podcasts that you like to listen to, some of your favorite books. What would you tell our listeners? Like, is there any other, advice that you would give, like, in growing?
Yeah.
Having a growth mindset, Andrew, is so important.
Yep. What I would say is go find yourself a mentor. So find someone that you look up to, that you want to
Mm,
be like, and go ask them to be your mentor. And the worst thing that can happen is they can say no. And the best thing that can happen is it can absolutely change your life. And there are organizations out there that provide mentoring to people and organize
mhm,
mentorship. So go and
right.
find that. But the best way is to find a person that you like or look up to. Go ask Lisa if you want to, and find a mentor for yourself, and that will help you to make those plans that we talked about before, to advance in your career or your life or whatever it is, incrementally, and move forward for yourself. So I've been lucky to have some amazing mentors that have really helped me in my career and my life, and I encourage others to do the same, and I try and give
Absolutely.
back myself as well.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, do that and then pull somebody else forward with you, right?
That's right.
It's really important. Well, Andrew, this is called Something Extra. I ask every guest this question. What do you believe is the something extra that every leader needs?
I believe the something extra that every leader needs is empathy. We talked about that before. I think
Mhm.
running a mile in someone else's shoes, seeing what it is that they're doing. I think too many leaders are up on a pedestal, if you will. And I think really getting down and understanding what other people are going through in an intimate way and being able to understand their programs. There was that TV show a number of years ago called Undercover Boss.
Yes,
And I
I
just
love
imagine,
Undercover Boss.
I imagine the CEOs after Undercover Boss must have had such a better understanding of their organization and the challenges that people were going through. So get down from your pedestal and get out there and see what your folks are doing, and it'll help you understand them better, and it'll help you be a better leader.
That's so good. Andrew, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Thank you for making the time to be on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
And I will see you soon. I
Yeah,
know, 'cause we're in a lot of the same rooms. Thanks so much.
thank you.
Something Extra with Lisa Nichols is a Technology Partners production. Copyright Technology Partners, Inc. 2019. To learn more about this week's guest, check out the show notes at tpi.co/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving us a review. Thank you for listening to Something Extra.